Hi there, and welcome to the Real Estate Property Management project deliverable for the Computer Science course Introduction to Database. This is CSCI 562. And for this final project, I was tasked with developing a real estate property management system. And the goal is to design this database system that can efficiently manage property listings, client information, contracts, transactions, all these things for a real estate agency. And so during the planning phase, I identified some key entities and their relationships based on the project requirements. And I'll dive into those entities in the MySQL environment that we're currently looking in. So the first table that I've created is the properties table. You'll see that it contains a property ID, address, property type, a number of rooms, square footage, parking, pool, gym. Then I've also created a client table. You can see its properties or components there. An agents table, which gives you information about the agent. Uh, we have a listings table here that also gives you information regarding the associated property as well as the agent. The contracts table has been created. It would let you know the parties involved in the uh, real estate deal. So you can see that it references the client, the agent, as well as the property ID. And finally, we have a transactions table that has been created to store the transaction details, including the parties involved as it relates to the client, the agent, and the property. So now that the tables have been created, as you can see in MySQL, I've already created the tables. They're existing here. The next step is populating the tables. We want to ensure that these tables contain some sample data, and that way we can query them to um, assess the sort of organization and relationships, the data storage, everything like that. So the next thing we'll do is run these queries. I've made the sample data relevant to Texas A&M University Commerce. You'll see here that a client, a seller named Victor Ajasi is listed in the clients table. The agents, again, are samples, and some listings are shown here with different qualities and properties associated with them, along with the contracts and the transactions that occurred. So this is a preliminary framework for this real estate management database. And now that it's been populated, we can assess all of the tables individually by querying each one. So now that we know that there's 6 tables, we can go to each, starting with the agent, query it to understand that the data is in fact contained there. So we could query each one and we'll see the relevant information there. If we wanted to do more complex querying, we could join 2 tables and pull information. For instance, we have a property ID that is common to the contracts and the listings table. We can preview that by seeing here the contract ID is associated with the lease, the contract ID of 1, and in the table listings, you'll see that a property ID of 1 is listed here. So certain things can be related back to the other tables. So if we decide to do a join, we can go ahead and use these relationships to then join on. So you see the property ID 3 here is leasing. They signed the standard residential lease agreement, and the property ID 1 is shown here for a listing for the agent who is currently listing this property at 1 at this specific price. So property ID 1, again, is being purchased, and that is contract 2. So for listing property ID 1, that is being purchased here. So the price is shown, and that is sort of the relationship that you'd be able to see in client ID 3. It relates back here doing the purchasing. So you can do a more complex query. So you could select from clients table and you could join on the from the clients table. A client ID of 3 would be relevant to the standard purchase agreement. So you would join on the table of contracts. Join here. And then you join on the fact that the client ID in this case is equal. And when we do this, we need to provide an alias. So in this case, we can say CLI for clients, and for contracts, we can say CNT. So the CLI alias client ID is equal to the CNT alias of client ID. When we run this new query, we'll see that we're able to pull in some additional information regarding the contract, who it was sold and leased to in this specific case. Then from here, we could also pull in the property ID and loop in information about the property. And it just goes to show that this can, connect, and you can see exactly what is being stored within this framework that I've created. And so as a final example, we'll also join on the properties table, let's say PRO, on, in this case, the client is also using the contract rather, as it's joined second. We always know the joins because, as you can see here, the client ID shows up initially. We joined on the contracts, and so the contracts will show here another client ID. So the table expands this way, and the result set rather. And so when we want to view the additional expansion, the properties, we should join on contract and then client ID there that's associated with the contract would be equal to the property property ID rather is what we're dealing with in this specific case. Contract property ID is equal to the property ID of the property. And that's just how these foreign keys and relationships go, and they allow you to sort of develop these relationships that you're able to see here. Okay. Another interesting feature of the MySQL Workbench is this reverse engineer feature. So if you press Command R, you'll be able to view this different window where you can continue with your local host. You need to enter your login information. And then from there, you can continue, view your schema, your database schema. And what it does is it creates the entity relationship diagram for you. So in this diagram, you can see and understand the relationships of your different tables that are existing in your schema. So in this case, the real estate management database contains these specific tables, and they have these relationships that you can see here, which we did explore in the actual queries And so this lets you know how these tables are associated and all the different connections that they have. So it's a very good way to go in to see exactly how to access these different components from different what they do. You can see access to the contracts, clients, and parties as well. So thank you for taking the time to listen to this demonstration. This material is part of a approach to develop your understanding of database design and implementation using MySQL, SQL programming, and data modeling. Thank you.